What's up, it's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today I want to talk a little bit about US men's national team players who look to transfer this January. And after a World Cup that was productive for a lot of our players, there's a bit of interest in some guys to move up. There are some players who are struggling for playing time, maybe they could look to move down, and there are some players who are just in a bad situation. Though I have to say that for our general group of players from the World Cup, like our core group of players moving forward, I don't think any of them are in a downright terrible situation. Like, in fact, the only players who I think need to get out are guys like Gianluca, Busio. Honestly, not Tanner Tessman. He's actually doing well. I think the rest of the season would help him. But Busio, he probably needs to get out of Venezia. And Konrad, he's been in a terrible situation for a while. So he should look to leave. But aside from that, there's a lot of players who maybe you could think about it, but there's also a hard no on a lot of them. Gio Reyna staying at Dortmund, you kind of have to. Brendan Aronson's doing a great job at Leeds. I think our Fulham boys should stay there. And aside from that, there are loan players. I don't really know how to address them. Ricardo Pepe's doing a good job. He should probably stay there. In terms of January moves, for sure, every loan move I think is just about working out. But on to players who I think should definitely be considering a move. I think that Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie have to be thinking about leaving. Both of them are kind of in a similar situation where they're playing a good amount for a big club, but not as much as they probably could. Pulisic has interest from a lot of places, notably Newcastle, though it should be said that with the form of guys like Almiron, Joe Wilton, St. Maximin's imminent return, I don't think playing time is as guaranteed as we'd like to think. And when you look at how he is at Chelsea right now, he just started a game and he has a new manager with Graham Potter. And I think staying there for the rest of the season probably wouldn't hurt Pulisic's career. So he could be considering a move, and if he gets a really good offer, like a guarantee from Newcastle that he'd have playing time, I think at that point you take it, especially considering Newcastle's looking like they might get Champions League next season. But I think Pulisic, he's got to consider it, but I wouldn't really force him to make that move. Then Weston McKennie, I think with Juventus, it's kind of similar to Sergino Dest, where it's there's offers sometimes, and sometimes it looks like they want him out. Sometimes it looks like a core player in the team, and in the end, Dest ended up leaving, and it seems like it was the right decision. Not that Milan's gone great, but getting out of Barcelona at that time seemed good, and Juventus seemed like they're on a similar downward trajectory, at least for what they were, winning 8 or 9 straight Serie A titles. So with McKennie, and especially given that Conte really seems to like him, and he's wanted him at Tottenham for a long time, again, playing time isn't guaranteed if he goes to Tottenham. Højbjerg's looking really good, Basuma's getting some more time, then you have to beat out a Bentancur. But if there's a manager that really wants McKennie, then I think if that offer comes in, he should consider it. But at the same time, leaving Juventus isn't that big of a guarantee that for playing time right now. So, again, if he gets a really good offer, I'd consider it, but I don't think it's a pressing need to leave. After that, there are some players who are in a pretty good situation, but could considering moving up a level. I'm thinking Tim Weah, Yunus Musah, Tyler Adams, Josh Sargent, Cameron Carter-Vickers. All of them seem to be in pretty good situations, but Sargent maybe not. But aside from that, everybody's in a pretty good spot, but they could probably move up a level. Tim Weah's been kind of stagnant at Lille for a long time. I think there's a good chance that if he moves, he could find more success. But at the same time, if he stays at Lille and Jonathan David leaves and he gets a bigger role with teams kind of built around him next season, that could be great for his career as well. So I wouldn't rush him to move, but I think he could do well moving up a level. Similarly with Yunus Musah. He's been doing very well with Valencia. He's finally started to get a lot of playing time. I think that's making him better. But if a really good offer from, what were the teams linked with him? Liverpool, Inter Milan, if one of those comes in and they seem to have a plan for him, even if it is a good bit off the bench, moving up to that higher level, I don't think it'd be a bad thing. Again, getting consistent playing time for a good team in Spain, he should really consider that. And I think I would stay, at least, definitely for this January if I was him. But it's something to be considered. Then Tyler Adams, I think, is the most pressing case because he's coming in with a lot of hype after that World Cup window, and it might not be at that level again for a while. So if he gets a really big offer from, let's say, Manchester United to replace Fred, like, that's something you consider because, are you going to take a spot away from Casemiro? Probably not. Take a spot away from Christian Eriksen? Maybe, depending on the game. But you can go into that team and do well. And I think that's something you have to consider. Again, I think more playing time is probably going to be better for him. I think his development since going to the Leeds has been huge. But something you have to consider, again, because moving up that level, if it does work out, all of a sudden you're a starting player at Manchester United, which is a lot of players' dreams. Then Cameron Carter-Vickers at Celtic. It's just, I think he's done all he can at that level. He probably would have moved this summer if we had a manager who didn't punish success and would have went like, oh, you're playing at you're at a good club, you just moved there. Well, you're not playing as much, so even though you're in the Premier League, you're gone. You're out of the team. I think that's the only reason why he stayed at Celtic. And I think there's a lot of Premier League teams that could really benefit from his signing. I think that there's probably going to be a good amount of managers fired, in the near future. A lot of times, clubs like to give a new manager, a winter window to help them stave off relegation, or they fire somebody right after Christmas. Fingers crossed on Berhalter. They just give them the Christmas, then after that you fire them. But I think that moving to a Premier League club would probably be good. I honestly think moving to a championship club wouldn't be that big of a difference for him. So even if you go to somebody who's in a relegation battle and you don't do well enough that you've proved yourself that you should be still be a Premier League player, I think that doing what Jedi Robinson did a couple of years ago, playing 1 year in the Premier League, going to the championship and dominating, bouncing right back up to the Premier League and looking at a much better situation, I think that'd be great for Cameron Carter-Vickers. And lastly, we have Josh Sargent, who I actually think he's doing pretty well at Norwich. The only thing is that he's not playing as a striker consistently, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that he's playing a good amount. He's doing well. He's scoring goals. He's been a good player for them, and just not playing the position that we'd like him to play at. I don't think that's that big of a deal for him, or for him as a player, because the only reason we're that concerned about his position is because we have such a need at striker. If we had a ton of really good strikers, we wouldn't really be that concerned with our best striker option being played out at wing. I think that Norwich are doing well with him, and I think he is getting better as a player. He's finally regaining his confidence, and I think that going back to the Premier League, which seems pretty likely, who are the top teams in the Championship? I think it's Burnley and Sheffield United at the moment. But I mean, it's Norwich. They usually just bounce back. And honestly, even if it is playing in the Championship another year, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So again, you would think about moving up a level, but I wouldn't be that concerned if I was Sargent. Then we have some players who'd consider moving down a level. I wouldn't really dwell on this too much since all of these players I'm going to talk about just moved there in the summer. But Matt Turner, Luca de la Torre, and Sergino Dest. I know I said I wouldn't talk about lone players, but I think Dest is that crucial. With Turner, he's just a backup right now at Arsenal. And again, that's what Emiliano Martinez was, and we see how good he is now. And he's going to be playing a good amount with Europa League action. Arsenal's probably going to make the Champions League. And if he can find a way to be their European goalkeeper, I would definitely stay. I think that seems pretty good. And it's not like it's impossible to beat out Ramsdale for that number 1 spot. So I'd be fine with Turner if he stays. But at the same time, if you want to move down a level, move to even a championship team just to get consistent playing time, that'd be a good idea, I think. But again, I'd stay at Arsenal just for that playing time, or just for the Champions League minutes. But if you want to leave, that's understandable. Then Luca de la Torre, it's hard to judge too much because he was coming in with an injury, and he really hasn't had too much time, but he's not playing that much in Spain, so if he wants to move, let's say, back to the Netherlands, maybe move to a club like a PSV or a Feyenoord or something where he would get consistent time at a pretty good level, you play some European action, that would be understandable. But again, it's I think you just give him some more time, try to win that spot. Sergino Dest, similarly, dealt with an injury for very long. he came to the club kind of late, and I think that Milan could be a good spot for him. We've seen how much they've turned things around lately, but if you want to go somewhere with consistent playing time, like I'd honestly consider going back to Ajax. I think that looking back at things, he probably left Ajax a year too early, and maybe just going back there, trying to get his career back on track. And honestly, even if he ends up like staying at Ajax for a long time, like it's not like being an MLS lifer. We saw Daily Blind destroy us at that World Cup. Like I think that I think Dest probably more than the other players I'd consider dropping down the level, just getting able to do your thing. I think that'd be the best option for him, but probably not this winter. I'd probably ride things out of Milan. He's there on loan. He doesn't really have a choice, but something to consider. And lastly, some hard nose. I mentioned that before. Gio Reyna, Brendan Aronson, Jedi Robinson, Tim Ream. Like, they should definitely look to stay. There's no reason for them to leave at the moment. I don't think there's much to go on there. Chris Richards, I throw him in that as well. He really hasn't gotten going at Crystal Palace yet because of his injuries, but I think we'll have a good chance to see him given the injury to Gahey right now. Tompkins just got a red card. Mitchell got a red card as well, which would mean that either Richards plays left back for a bit, which I think is a pretty big possibility. Hopefully they just put a Schlupp or Riedefeld there. But it is possible. Maybe they put Joel Ward at left back, and that allows another center back spot to open up, and he could play alongside Joachim Anderson, which I think would be really good for both Palace and the U.S., just to get him like some looks with the team. And I think that things haven't like worked out perfectly, and I'm not sure if he ends up taking Gahey or Anderson's spot. So you should probably consider a move, but I don't think right now, and especially considering that like he'll probably play a lot this January. So Richards, I think he should stay for now. And the only other player I'd want to talk about needing to stay is Matthew Hoppe, because just stay somewhere for a long time. Looking back at it, it was a mistake to leave Schalke. I can understand not wanting to play in the second Bundesliga, but yeah, it would have been the right decision. He probably would have gotten like at least 10 goals that year. He would have had a lot of confidence. He probably would have gotten a big move to a Bundesliga team as opposed to basically wasting a year. But I think there were some injuries in there as well. And like Mallorca, they were giving him a decent amount of time, like only off the bench, but like he got an assist against Real Madrid. Like I don't think like that move was like a failure, but he just left. Like if he would have stuck it out, I think it would have gotten better. But yeah, so just stay at Middlesbrough. Just give it a chance. Just have some stability and make sure you can actually develop, because there's a ton of talent there, and I think that he could actually be one of our top strikers. And I think that Hoppe, he should just give it a chance. And yeah, so I've talked about for the European players who need a January transfer. For the MLS guys, like it's mostly like with the players we brought to the World Cup, it's Ferreira should probably leave. Everybody else has probably found their level, so I don't think it's really worth talking about. Like, aside from that, like John Tolkien should probably move. That might be it. If I look at it, I can find some other players, like maybe like a Leon Flock. He's done all he could. DeJuan Jones, maybe he should try to move on. He looks like he's probably not going to get any better if he stays the MLS. Like, there are players, but I don't think there's anything like that pressing from like a national team perspective. And with a lot of our U20 players, I think they should probably stay. I'm not actually too mad at Paxton Aronson leaving, because, well, there's so many young players at the Union that it kind of opens up spots for other guys, but I'm not sure if that was the right decision for him personally. We'll have to see, but I don't think like anybody really needs to move on outside of like Ferreira, probably Tolkien. Like, from a national league perspective, those are the only like real things I'm looking at. And yeah, so I've talked about a lot of good moves coming up, hopefully, and yeah, see you.